Hey Vibers, it's Kai. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Today, I'm sitting with television producer, actor, and screenwriter, the one and only Dave Finkel. Before we get started today, please be sure to follow me on your favorite social media platforms at The Vibe with Kai, or visit my official website at thevibewithkai.com, where I'm always posting things that'll help you do good, feel good, be good, and live a good life full of good vibes. Enough talk out of me. You're not here for me today. You're here for this guy. My guest today is Dave Finkel, television producer, actor, screenwriter, who is most known for his work on such shows such as United States of Terror, 30 Rock, New Girl, among many other things. Mr. Dave Finkel, how are you, my friend?
Very good. Very, very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. I know this is your first time here on my podcast. Just so you know, I ask the hard-hitting questions.
Sure.
I like those gotcha questions. That's what I do.
Yep, bring it on.
All right. So first and foremost, you work in Hollywood, which means that you clearly are trying to destroy the fabric of society by sacrificing the blood of a baby lamb in order to appease our evil overlords, obviously. How is that going for you? And follow-up question, are the gods appeased?
We are winning. The gods are never appeased. The bloodlust runs deep. Once they tasted blood, they just want more. So
they just want more.
The pound of flesh becomes a giant sack of flesh. It's on it.
Do you get people that honestly come up to you or say things to you that like things along those lines that just make you laugh? Like, I'm not saying that Hollywood's perfect, but because by God, it's not. But do you ever laugh at some things that you hear and you're like, what is this cult that you're speaking of?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The awareness of people that actually do this for a living who aren't aware of how it actually works. The amount of actors that like step in and go like, "Are you the one that writes for me?" Like, no, that's not how it works. I don't write for one character. I don't write just like a bunch of disconnected lines and then have somebody else write the other side of the conversation.
That's not how it works. I have to get rid of half of my questions now.
Well, I'm happy to retrain everybody's focus.
You've worked on a lot of different things, man. You've worked on New Girl, which, by the way, and we're going to get into this because I'm watching it for the first time. I've never seen it before.
Awesome.
I'm watching it for the first time. New Girl, United States of Terror, 30 Rock. You did the Friends spinoff, Joey. Just Shoot Me, Pinky and the Brain, George Lopez. How did this all? This obviously just all fell into your lap, and you didn't work hard at all for this. How did that come to be?
I'm just magical in that way. I didn't really do any work. I just show up and they give me money. It's perfect. It's a perfect scenario. Doesn't everyone work that way? No, it all started, I have a partner that I've been working with for 28 years now, 27, 28 years. We both started off in sketch comedy together out in LA. I live in Portland now. I said out here, but it's out there.
You defected away.
I did. I got out.
I heard about that.
Yes. So we were doing sketch comedy in a company called Acme Comedy Theater. It's still around. And a friend of Brett's wife's came to see us in a show and loved some of the stuff we were doing. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to come pitch on Animaniacs?" Which was, at that time, it was still in its heyday. And we came and we pitched a bunch of stuff and he bought one. And then once we wrote that, and it was a relative success. It was about Ernest Hemingway because kids love Hemingway. He brought us in to pitch on Pinky and the Brain, and we segued that into. There was a moment. Remember the WB, Dubba Dubba?
I do very much so. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you're of a certain age.
Get off my lawn, Dave. Get off my lawn.
They wanted their Simpsons over there. So they thought, Pinky and the Brain could be our Simpsons. So they developed that into a primetime series that this will shock you. It didn't work. But I found myself within, a month of working in primetime TV pitching to Steven Spielberg, which was, surreal to say the least.
Sorry, excuse me. Let me pick that name up real quick. Hold on.
There's going to be a lot of names dropped all over the place. And off of that, Brett and I made the decision after that. It's like after the show ended, we were like, we love doing primetime TV. I was the only child. I have very good parents, but the TV kind of also had a hand in raising me. I watched everything, and I've been a student of TV my entire life. I love movies, but I love TV.
And you've had a lot of success. You've had your hand in a lot of memorable television shows that a lot of people know and love. But are there any projects? I'm sure there's plenty, but are there any projects that stand out to you that you really wanted to take off that just didn't take off, and you're like, damn, man, how did this not catch on?
You enter into every single one hoping that it's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, that which way the wind blows. I think New Girl, as an example, is like, we knew we had fire at our backs. We knew there was a thing there, but like, what's the longevity? Is this going to last a long time? There's other stuff like going on Joey when we thought, well, Friends is ending. We got to go on Joey. That makes sense. And then you quickly realize mathematically that 1/6 of Friends audiences watch Joey, which makes sense. There's 5/6 missing. so we tried hard.
Yeah.
We burned a heavy candle.
Did you feel a pressure for that? Like when Joe, because obviously Friends was obviously one of the most successful sitcoms of all time, and then you had you and your team had the idea for Joey and for writing for that and producing. Did you feel like this intense pressure, or was it just like, hey, let's just see what happens and go with it?
We missed the boat the first season. We got under a deal at Warner Brothers the season after Friends went off the air, and Joey we knew was getting picked up. So we thought we got to get on that show. We didn't get on that show. We got on a different show that barely saw the light of day. Best cast ever, but it didn't work out. And we went over to Joey in its second season. And I know that the pressure for Scott Saveri and Shanna and all the people that sort of created that show was, as you might guess, crazily high. The scrutiny was insane. Even in the second season, they were on us every step of the way, trying to like make sure that it was like that we were playing to the audience and we were doing it right, and we were that they needed Joey to be Friends, and it was just never gonna be. It
right.
Just you knew it the moment you stepped into it, going like, God, everyone's dancing so hard, tap dancing as fast as they can, but this is not a thing.
Right. So I told you before, I'm working on New Girl right now.
Sure.
I've heard of the show. I had never watched it before in my life.
Where are you right now?
What's up?
Where are you in it right now?
I'm halfway through season 1.
Okay, all right.
I'm halfway through season 1, and what I do, and this is actually how I met Valerie Campbell. So I was what I've been doing since October is I've been working my way through Gilmore Girls because where I grew up, we did not have Gilmore Girls. That's not a thing that me and my sister gathered around the TV to watch.
I get it. It's
so
okay.
Yes, yeah. So like I had never watched it before in my life. My roommate was sitting watching it one day, and she was singing the opening theme song. I'm like, this is very white of you. And I put that up on TikTok, and it went viral. And people were like, sure, you should watch the show. I think you like it. And I'm like, I don't know, it's not made for me. And then I started watching it, and I loved it. What I do is I watch every episode, and then I recap the episode, and I make a funny recap. And I started doing the same thing for New Girl.
Oh, cool.
And it's hard. It's very hard to film a funny recap for an already funny show because the punchlines that you would write, you and your team would write. I'm like, oh, well, I can't. That's the punchline that I would go with. But you already did. It's like I can't do it. So thanks for stealing my material. That was
you're welcome.
10 years after you wrote it.
Exactly.
How much of that show was improv, and how much of that was your team?
So that's a great question. When we started, Jake Kasdan, who directed the pilot, he's done Jumanji, he did Freaks and Geeks, he did Undeclared. He's got his hands in a lot of different places, and his whole thing was like, let's let the cast. Every show as it grows becomes a synthesis of the writing and the acting. Like they sort of inform each other, and you end up following the follower, and it becomes its own thing. This show, he sort of early on was like, let him open it up. We had really strong actors, Greenfield and Jake Johnson and Zoe and Hannah and Lamorne. In the pilot, it was Damon.
Right. Very
strong actors, but very strong improvisers, like incredibly strong improvisers. So we do the scripted takes. We do like 1 or 2 scripted takes and very quickly go off in a million different directions. I mean, there's whole scenes that actually made it to TV that were not the intention of the scene. They just, we followed Max. Max and Jake would just open up and it would go in a billion different directions. Lamorne would pile, like it was just, it got crazy and you would have to like cut around it to make it televisable because it obviously would get filthy at times. But it was, you know, I'm not going to say it was always fun because when you're shooting the show, it's not always fun. And, but you know, so I'd go down to set and I would have a stack of pages about that thick that were just alt jokes. We call them alt jokes, you know, different alternative jokes. For every line, we'd have 7 or 8 different jokes that we wanted the actors to get. So when we got to post, we could play with the pieces. But then the actors were giving us so much stuff that it's like it was a trade-off between who had the best stuff. And you know, I wouldn't say that like the actors did it all the time or we did it all the time. It really became a synthesis of like these guys did a lot of really smart improvising and we threw them a lot of good jokes that they would work off of. So it's sort of like it was a hand-in-hand thing. So
it sounds like your time on that show was incredibly difficult, coming up with material, and you know, it was very hard.
The problem with primetime TV is that, you know, especially I'm already talking like the old man of television. Back in those days, we used to do 22 episodes. We didn't have your 8-episode runs. No, we
used to do 22 episodes up a hill in the snow.
Exactly. And there were seasons where we would do 27 episodes, 28 episodes. You know, we did that Prince episode. That we had a whole room just working on the Prince episode for 6 months. That's all they did. So you know, the season starts to get on top of you very quickly. It was a 24/7, 365 deal, and I slept at my office 9 times out of 10. I had a dresser full of clothes. Liz had a dresser full of clothes. We would just like live there. We lived it. And I was, you know, married. I got 3 children. One of them was born during that first season. So it was not an easy task.
What was it like casting that show? Like how did you know that you found your core group, that you're like, this is it, man. This is going to work. When in the process did you know? Was it while it was already filming that you're like, oh, like I think this is going to work, or was it before that?
No. So what was cool for this was that, you know, we got Zoe on board pretty early, and she was awesome in that she showed up for almost every audition. She sat on the couch next to me and Liz and Brett, and she was there for all of it. And they would read their sides and they would do their auditions, and then she would go up and she would riff with them. She would, you know, go run the lines, or she would do scenes, or, you know, we wrote a lot of scenes that never made it to the show just to get the vibe going. She was on board for all of that. So we knew early, like I think Max was the first one where we were like, we got Schmidt. We got that. He's locked. He's perfect. We knew when Jake and Max worked together, that was a thing. The last piece of the puzzle to actually come on board was Damon, because we could not figure out who Coach was. We just couldn't find the person. And Damon wasn't available. He was on Happy Ending.
Yeah, because was it that he filmed both pilots like around the same time? Is that what ended up happening?
No, Happy Endings was already on. It had already on. A year or two, something like that. And the rumor was it was going to be canceled. Our casting executive was like, oh, it's going away, so don't worry about it. We can go out to him. We went out to him, and then ABC picked it up. So we had him for the pilot, and then he had to go away. And
right. And I know he comes back in season 3 or 4, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Like one of
3, I think. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I always say in my recaps is that like that core group is like friends' goals. Like just to have that kind of like, what I love about what you and your team did is that it's not just about like, you know, let's just be silly. Like there is just this underlying depth to their friendship that you don't see a lot of in a lot of TV, at least in my opinion. And so you end up like not just rooting for individual people, but you end up rooting for everybody and their friendships and their romances, and the way that they support each other is phenomenal. And I got to ask you about Schmidt, because like how the hell could you write somebody so ridiculous yet charming at the same time? How was that? How'd that even come to be?
We've talked a lot about that, oddly. I think the thing about Max and the character Schmidt that was interesting, and we knew from early on, I can't remember how it happened, but we knew pretty early on that we had a deeper story for Schmidt. Like it wasn't there in the first, probably the first half season or something. But at one point we saw a flashback of Nick and Schmidt in their dorm room, and we got a sense that somewhere along the way Schmidt went through a transformative moment. And because he used to be a heavy kid, and as you get deeper in the series, you'll see he's actually like there's a much deeper, richer story there. I think because of that, instead of making that, it's a funny joke. It's all great that it's a funny joke, but I think that Liz is a playwright first and foremost. She came out of Yale. She was she's a very formidable playwright, and she didn't want to just let it lie on the joke. So we would once we discovered that thing about Schmidt's past, we sort of like glommed onto it and developed it out and let it be like that. That this is all because of insecurity. And it's all because he just wants love. He's deeply in love with Nick. He deeply wants to be in love with somebody else. He's not a douchebag. He's a guy who's playing the part of a douchebag who's actually a sensitive little Jew. So once we reconcile that for ourselves, the rest kind of writes itself.
Right.
And then you got a guy like Max in there who's willing to go the distance on that.
And that's amazing. And I'm curious, when you're writing things now and you're producing things now, obviously there's been like a major shift in, I guess, what is quote acceptable and what is not in comedy nowadays. Which I'll keep sort of my personal opinions to myself in this regard. But do you feel that? Do you think that do you think things are a little too PC now? Do you think that some of the jokes that were written back in even the early 2000s, do you think that it's fair that those jokes won't fly in 2021?
It's a tough line. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't.
Yeah.
Fortunately right now I'm not having to write comedy right now. I'm doing a drama right now, which makes I'm doing a drama in Ireland. So that makes it very different, like immediately makes it different. But I've thought about this. I've talked a lot about it. There are jokes that we did on the show that we would never get away with now. And probably shouldn't get away with now. Or shouldn't have gotten away with then. The other side of the coin is like I guess the question I constantly ask is like, could George Carlin, Richard Pryor, could they exist now? Could we do that? I think when Chappelle came out with his show, his last stand-up, he got beaten down, and you sort of ask yourself, like, isn't the job of a comic to ask the tough questions that can't be asked in a conventional one-on-one situation? So I suppose the answer is that is the job, and yet we can be responsible. I don't know. It's really complicated.
It's hard because it's not like black or white, and like it's not like you pun intended sometimes, but like sure. There's so much gray about what is acceptable and what is not. And what I love about Dave Chappelle, people like Dave Chappelle, is that he doesn't care. Like he knows that that's his thing, and he's like, right. I'm not gonna change. This is who I am. If you don't like me, you don't have to listen to me. But on the other end, he also he's at a point now that he can create his own opportunities, and people will just flock to him. But when you're trying to pitch to studios and networks now, it's just a completely different vibe, I guess, because people might be extra careful.
Yeah, it's very different. I think as you watch the show go on, part of the issue is with the show, and I think this speaks directly to what you're talking about, is like part of the issue we had with the show is like Lamorne is a very, I'm going to speak specifically to Lamorne because I think it's sort of like a question that it's certainly on my mind, and I know we've talked a bit about it, is he came into the show late. We didn't have a lot of time to develop his character. So we sort of like went the easy jokey route, and I think what's interesting about that and interesting about Lamorne as an actor is he's a very nuanced, he's very fun, like ridiculously funny, and one of the most charming people I've ever known. But there are times when I watch the show now and I go, I don't know if we should have done that, because I think where we had a lot of leeway with Max because we did have a ton of time to develop that character out. Lamorne hit the ground running in episode 2, and we didn't have the time to sort of like, one of the things we got to do with all the actors, as I said, is we wrote scenes that were just for us, just so we could understand how what the patterns were and the speech patterns and how they relate to each other. And does this work for the character? Does that work for the character? And we didn't get a chance to do that with Lamorne. So I feel like with his character specifically, we didn't find him until like late in the game. I'm saying episode like season 5. He's funny. He's really funny. But I mean, if we're being honest, like he was the black guy.
Sure. Oh, sure. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that because that's what I hate calling them my followers because that makes me sound like I'm leading a cult. But the people that follow me that are watching it with me, because I'll go live and we'll all watch it together. They'll say that exactly what you just said, that Winston kind of like just ends up finding his flow, you know, as the series goes on, and Winston ends up becoming a lot of people's favorite character. He's already I'm only halfway through season 1. He's already kind of like up there, so I can only imagine what it's going to be like down the road for me. You know, I love that character.
He's a master of what he does. Like he's a master of. Lamorne is just a fascinating human being. He brings so much to the table that has nothing to even to do with race. He's just an interesting guy. And then you put the race, you know, knowing we're constantly wrestling that thing of like, how do we not just do a stock TV black character? Like that was a thing that was always in the forefront. Did we do it well? No, you know, not often, not as often as I would hope, but we tried, you know, and the conversation was certainly there. Lamorne was, you know, we had a lot of conversations with him. He actually came up and he wrote an episode.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he wrote an episode in season 4, I think. Mm. It was good. He was asking the right questions, and he's obviously insanely funny. So it's not that we didn't try. It's just like when you're in a compressed situation like this, it's hard. And thank God the guy was strong enough that as the season progresses, as the show progresses, you see like the show. The series starts to find his dynamic and find what makes him tick. And I like to think we did some interesting stuff with him. Did we nail it? No, probably not. But you know,
do you want to quickly touch upon what happened at the end in regards to because the show, from what I understand, ended kind of abruptly. I guess I'm not sure what I would imagine that. I think from what I heard, season 6 was supposed to kind of maybe be the final season, and then season 7 they're like give us a truncated season 7. I
think we did 8 episodes of a final season. Mm-hmm. They told originally season 6 was supposed to be the end of it. Mm-hmm. Shows get long in the tooth. Like they definitely like run their course, especially when you're doing. By that point, we'd done 139 episodes in 6 years. That's a lot of TV. So at the end of season 6, they were ready to pull the plug, and Liz went into the executives and was like, "Look, can you at least let us give this show the proper send off that we think it deserves? The fans want it, we want it, the crew wants it, everyone's ready for 8 more episodes. 8 more? 8 more. I think it's 8 more." And they let us do that 8. I wish we would have been able to do at least like 12 or 13 more to dig into some other stuff, but 8 was good. It was nice.
Has any streaming platforms that have like come up to you and been like, "Hey, do you want to do this again?" Maybe like because it's obviously it's flourishing on Netflix right now. Like people
doing very
are
well
watching it. Have any of them approached you just to kind of pick your brain to see if that's a possibility?
Not that I know of. I should ask Liz. I don't think so, and I think right now everyone would go like, let's give it some time. Give it some time, but maybe one day. Haven't heard that yet, though.
Yeah, well, Zoe is she's flourishing on TikTok right now. I don't know if you have TikTok or if you're following her on TikTok, but she's doing her thing right now, and people love it. I love it.
Yeah, no, look, Zoe's a phenomenal performer. Like she's such an interesting personality, and I'm not super surprised by that at all. What's the sort of general tenor of her stream?
So what she likes to do, like she likes to set up duets. So like she'll like be talking to somebody off screen, like with her quirky, awkward self, and then people will just duet and all of that. Like it's brilliant. It's great. She even made the intro for New Girl. She like remade it, but for TikTok.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah, that got sent around.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so
that's also very friendly. I just I don't watch anyone's streams. That's the only thing. But
right. So my last question to you is this, and one thing I do appreciate you're taking your time because I know you're busy. I know you said you're flying out to Ireland in a couple days, right? In less than a week, you're flying out there.
A week from tomorrow.
Right. Oh my gosh. I know that last month we lost a comedy legend, Norm MacDonald.
Yep.
I have always vibed with his humor, even back in the SNL days when I was too young to really understand what was going on. But I still loved his sense of humor. And as I got older, I really vibed with how his approach, his delivery. I know that you worked on the TV show Norm for a couple of years, I think from 99 to 2001.
Yep.
What was it like working with Norm MacDonald?
I've written a bit about this, especially on Facebook. I eulogize that day because I haven't talked to Norm. It's been a while because he was reclusive for a little while, and then he sort of came back. Norm was one of the most complicated human beings I've ever come in contact with in the best possible way. He was at turns super weird and then unbelievably generous, like within moments of each other. His approach, I should start by saying Norm MacDonald might be one of the smartest people I've ever known, save for maybe Tina Fey. Those are two of the smart, truly, when you talk to them, you're like, oh, you're operating at a whole other level. You're seeing things in 360 degrees at the same time. Norm, was very mysterious about his life. He's very cagey talking about his history, but he would come up with these things where you just be like, I don't know how you got there. I don't know what that is. We'd write these really intricate jokes for him, and when we'd shoot him in front of an audience, he would blow the punchline at the top of the joke, immediately, and then he would keep talking, and he would circle back around, and then he would kill with something that was I don't know where that came from. It was impressive on every level, and that's the way he lived his life. He took major risks, and his sort of edict for himself, I think, and all those around him were it can always be funnier. It can always be funnier. And then there was like myself, I think even more for him, an astute student of stand-up comedy. That guy knew them all. We get to have Richard Pryor on the show at the very end of his life, actually, and towards the end of the show, both things. And Richard Pryor was not communicative. He had a 10-minute span where he could talk. And I've never seen Norm get emotional before. But when he met Richard, and there was a moment where they took him off stage, and they introduced him, to each other, and Norm got really emotional. It was like, "You're the reason I'm here. You're everything to me." And you could hear him well up, and that. I take that with me because it was such a deeper understanding of a very complicated human being that I truly adored. I really loved Norm, but he was very strange.
Yeah, I mean, he's a comedy genius, a comedy great, and I spent the last couple weeks just listening to some of his old school stuff again, and it's one of a kind, and I can't think of many people that have just that courage and patience, when it comes to telling a joke, because I think his jokes require patience, and it's it's going to pay off. You just got to stick with me. It's going to be worth it, I promise.
If you really want a study of bravery, go back and watch I think it's the 2006 John Stamos roast.
Yes.
It is by far, because he just goes out there with the oldest jokes you've ever heard. Oldest jokes ever. And he's slaved. You hear the audience going what? And then they slowly roll, and then it's amazing.
Oh, I love it. And I want to say I thank you for your time today. I was thinking of you recently because I'm watching a show called Only Murders in the Building. I don't know if you
sure.
And I feel like you should write something like that. A murder mystery, kind of half dark comedy, half serious, kind of thriller. I feel like you would kill it. You would just kill it.
The thing I'm shooting right now in Ireland is is more drama than comedy, but there's some comic elements to it. It definitely feels like it's trending. It's going that direction. So yeah.
Well, you're welcome for giving you the idea. If you win any sort of award, I expect you to be like, "Hey, listen, this black guy from Philly, he told me to do it, so I did it. So this is for you, Kyrus."
The vibe.
Listen, man, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sitting with me. I'm gonna be out in the LA area at some point, either later this year or early next year. So I'd love to if you're in the area, I'd love to meet
Absolutely.
up with you and
it'd be great
and have a cup of coffee, something like that. Thank you, my friend, for sitting with me. Everybody else, if you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to follow me on your favorite social media platforms at thevibewithkai.com, where I'm always posting things that'll help you do good, feel good, be good, and live a good life full of good vibes. My friend Dave Finkel, producer of New Girl, among many other things. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. As always, God bless and good vibes.